Let's get you from struggling with what you may feel as crappy storage to something award-winning. One that uses as few chests as possible and put a stop to that chest boogie. The beauty of this is it will adapt and grow as you progress in the game. From the humble beginnings to a factory powerhouse. We'll also cover how to adjust with the changes to use the new autoplacer which was introduced in the Animal Tracks release. When you first start Dinkum, the only storage you have is the travel bag in Fletcher's. This is great moving forward as anything you put in there is available when you visit another player's island. However, this won't cut it long term. Let's get you started with the building blocks. Once you unlock crafting wooden crates, this will be the beginning of your hoarding. In case you're wondering, the fancy chests I've got you get from the deep mines, which you can collect when you loot the contents and take the chests. And you can color code your chests or crates with the paints that you get in the mines. You can use the paint to reflect the color that matches the contents or the zone, which is a great segue to my layout, so let me share that with you so you can visualize it. I'll also leave a link to it in the description should you want a copy of it. Now before we get into the meat of this sandwich, let me take a moment to explain items. You'll notice that every item you can pick up will have a background color that categorizes it. This helps you group items with like items. The other thing to note is whether items are stackable or not. This means that an item can have more than one in one tool belt or pocket slot. When you first start your storage area, I'd recommend starting with a space of roughly 21 to 22 tiles wide with space that makes it easy to expand. Once you unlock John's shop, he'll start to sell a tape measure, which you'll want to get at least one of these. This is often on rotation. Not only does it measure spaces as you would expect, but it also is flexible to be used with time assisters like the windmill, the solar panel, and later in the game the auto sorter. But more on that very soon. What I like to do when I set up a workspace, I set up 4 chests. One for wood, one for metals and minerals, one for old relics, and one for animal parts. This itself is the cornerstone of my setup. I set up a crafting table, and right behind it is a cooking table. All items are a short walk away from crafting to easily gather the resources you need. Wood and metals are by far the most popular items. Using the tape measure, start at just right of the crafting table and measure 10 tiles square. This will prepare your area so you can work accordingly. Speaking of which, this is how I place my items in my metal and mineral chests. The first row is raw, unprocessed items, and working left to right are the more rare and expensive items. Working down the rows in the chests are the bars or cements that you get from grinding rocks. Take a moment to reflect on the color of the items. They're all the same here. I also bundle nails here, as you can get nails from tin bars, and in case you didn't know, you can get tin sheets by putting tin bars into the table saw. You also get them from the barrels around the place. Looking at the contents of my wood chest, I follow a similar pattern or convention. Logs are in the top row and you'll see the matching planks are below. Then another important chest are the relics, which is where I store my old keys and all the parts that I dig up from the metal barrels and the yellow bins. Again, take note of the background color of all these items. The fourth chest are items from animals, whether it be feathers, teeth, eyes, and scales. That sounds gross, but that's where I put it all. Including poop, which when in close proximity to your compost bin, which I recommend is a great workflow. Should you choose to, you can also consolidate the animal parts with that of the wood and call this nature. Since wood only really takes 7 or so slots in that chest, this saves one chest. The sign writing license you get by getting to logging license level 2, which unlocks the landscaping licenses. You need both of these to unlock to get the sign writing. Once you have the sign writing table, you can either go with a handwritten sign or the item signs, which I much prefer. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say. With the signs being used, it also leaves a cavity or a space for me to place some lighting for the work area, and find this works really well even when it's late. This is the time that I usually craft my stuff for the next day anyway. That's only 4 chests. What about the rest, I hear you asking? Well, you'll notice that I've intentionally kept short distances between the chests where I need to use the items. This is to ensure efficiency. To the left of the crafting table are the other non-essential craftables, namely seeds, shells, chests and sign, along with paint. On the opposite side of the space is the cooking area. Before I explain about this, it's worth to talk about my workflow. As you can see here, I've got items on the edge of this aisle, giving me easy access to things I either cook or brew. I'll take an item, pop them into a billy can or kettle, and once they're done, they're stored at the end of the space for the finished products. Here, I can take it and put it into the kegs for things that take 2 days, or keep the final products, that is, bottle brush and wattle brew, right for easy access, all in the same space. No thinking required. Next to the cooking table, I have them logical. To the left are the ingredients to use with the cooking table, like meats, raw crops, amongst other things. I like to keep my raw meats in a fridge, which by the way you can get in the game. Otherwise, I like to use the frozen chests, which implies that they're perishables in there. If you're short of getting yourself a refrigerator in the game, you can get a iced block from the winter season. You get these by finding and destroying the ice block during winter, which will give you a frozen crafting table, otherwise known as an ice sculpting table. You'll need to gather a bunch of snowballs too as ingredients to the craftables. I also like to keep my refrigerated items like egg, cheese, milk in there as well. Again, less to think about. You'll notice I've got 2 refrigerated chests, which again you could easily consolidate into the one for stuff that you'd put into a cooler or fridge in real life. I just really like a fridge. I personally like to keep it separate for things like crabs, which don't stack and go into billy cans for making crab soup. That said, I also have crab chests dedicated for these critters. It's worth noting that mangrove sticks, which are used for cooking, are right behind me. I consider them wood, but they're also used with cooking. To the right of the cooking table are my consumables and final products from my cooking table. You'll notice I've got 1 chest for finger or hand foods, and courtesy of Mrs. G, I have plated food for soups and meals. As I covered before, I have the drinks and things that come from the billies and kettles or into from the kegs at the very end. Before I show you another space, I want to quickly show you my barbecue area. Whilst it's not storage, it's important to my workflow. This is where I cook my raw meat and fruit, again deliberately close to my raw ingredients, which are equally close to the cooking table and the barbecue. With the introduction of the autoplacer in the Animal Tracks release, this space can easily be morphed into an automation yard. Barbecues are the best candidates for the autoplacer usage. Next are billy cans and kettles. Food modelers can also be used to make great money from rice, so hooking a few of these up will make some quick dink, as well as using them for the grain mills. Having said that, the autoplacer is more of a mid to late game item. Ironically, after you'll have needed that extra time to do all the other stuff in the game. Shout out to Spiky Wombat on Reddit, who shared this technique, placing an item in front of each of the machines to spit out the processed produce into a single aisle. Got a limited number of autoplacers? Well, fancy swapping out furnaces for grinders or table saws and just keep the spares in these chests, and then enjoy the satisfying clicking of collecting all the produce. Aside from these core workspaces, I have an extended workspace, which is where I keep my sign writing table and repair table. I also keep my ice crafting bench there as well, and here I keep my chest of tools that need repairing along with a collection of repair kits. All of these items are occasionally use items, but in a fairly logical order. I like to use my clothing that's usually gifted to me by the NPCs based on the clothing slot it goes in, whether it be shoes, pants, shirts, face items, or head items. As time goes on, if it gets overcrowded, I'll split it into subcategories, like shorts and pants for example. The mannequins are great for this. You buy them from Clover, assuming she's on your island, and just place an item which the mannequin wears. You'll get a visual reference and avoid needing signs. This means you'll have more space for these occasional items. This brings me to the non-stackable items that we tend to hoard. The classic example is the slingshot. How many slingshots does one need? Lately, I've tended to collect up to 1 row of each to have them on hand for Franklin's Craftables and would sell the rest. Of course, not in hard mode because I'm not allowed to do that, but just generally, I would sell them. Tools and weapons are another one that just seem to accumulate. I'm guilty of having dedicated weapons per chest on my OG island. While I have the space in that island, this is definitely overkill. Again, I'd like to keep a few extra for those new players or friends that might appreciate them and consolidate them down to weapons. Once you upgrade to power tools, do you really need an axe or a pickaxe anymore? Mrs. G, I'm sure you appreciate my growth in this area. Just to reiterate, keep a few for the odd recipe and desperate needs. They do come in handy when you want to give tools to your NPCs when they're hanging out with you. Furniture. It's another space hog, but I've found that splitting them into type is enough. This being floors, walls, tables, beds, cabinets, etc. I also keep these in my third storage zone, aka the very occasional area. It's worth noting that despite me having primary, secondary and tertiary areas, it's still concise enough to fit within the scope of my auto sorter. You can use the tape measure to show you the service area, which if you follow my layout, you'll be completely fine. Do you recall at the start of the video I suggested to have a space of 21 square? That's no coincidence. It falls in line with servicing of the auto sorter so that you can keep everything flowing really easily. Along with the auto sorter, the advanced crafting and cooking tables are a bit more endgame, but this layout lends itself perfectly to be in the range of the items you need, even if you don't yet have an auto sorter. Like I'd said earlier in the video, it will grow with you. No need to reorganize or reset it up, just go with the flow. Oosa. You'll also notice that I've got spaces for collected items from my crab pots and also accessible from my auto sorter. These critters feed right into, literally, my fish in my fish ponds. Here I keep a chest on hand for my critter overflow and spare rod to catch the fish to stock and rotate as the count of fish row gets to 15 for some fish cloning. Take note of placement of my time assisters. My windmill is placed central enough to speed up the barbecues, mills, kettles, billy cans and stone grinders. It's also worth checking every so often using a tape measure that your solar panel, which has a smaller range, catches all your processes. This might explain why I always felt that my power tools felt they took forever. For more tips on Dinkum, here's a playlist for you. Thanks AG Nation, my channel members, your monthly pledge keep me motivated to keep creating.